Good afternoon, everyone. As Lento was saying, we're having one of the finalists for tomorrow, which is a huge success, becoming one of the 10 finalists out of 10 out of 100 candidates. So big congrats. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
So we're going to talk. I guess this is the second panel in a row talking about InsurTech. We'll try to make this lively and amusing, so don't hesitate to interrupt each other to build on each one of your comments. I'm going to briefly introduce them, and I will ask you to also briefly talk about what you've done in the past, what you're doing right now. Carmen is head of innovation at Mutua Madrileña. Julio is a serial entrepreneur, and I don't know how many companies you've launched already, but several in your career. And Felipe is an investor, also specializing in purely on fintech and insurtech startups. So if you want to, very briefly to the audience, present yourselves, and we'll get started.
Well, when I joined Mutua Madrileña 1 year ago, and I said, I'm joining the innovation department, everybody says, what do you do there? So what are you doing to innovate in the insurance sector, and especially in Mutua Madrileña? That for some of you, if not from Madrid, Mutua Madrileña is a company with 2 million clients, basically in Madrid and the biggest cities in Spain. And what we try to do in Mutua is trying to be at the same level as other companies that they appear in, like Bought by Many, that has just spoken previous to us, and having the same level of relationship with the clients. Now, everything is changing, and clients know that they don't need a car, they just need to go from one place to another, and it's happening exactly the same with the insurance. Most of us, we don't need to have a car insured during 1 year. Probably we just need to have an insurance or need to be quiet when we are driving with our families just during this moment. And companies is a huge challenge for us because we need to be prepared for what the customer is asking or expecting from us. I think that what we try to do from innovation is trying to understand this expectation and trying to define this product that is going to be competitive in the next 5 years when probably everything changes.
Julio?
Yeah, so Video is a visual intelligence platform. It's a startup created 2 years ago by my co-founder Manuel and I. We were with an app already in the house of the insurer, right? So we decided, okay, what about if we connect now in real time with a geolocated video call with an agent or an expert in order to speed up processes? And that's how Video started. And then we decided to add smart technologies around the visual channel, right? Like artificial intelligence or augmented reality to provide contextual information on the claim. Right now we are 22 people working in Spain and in Mexico, and working with around 19 insurance companies around the world.
Fermín.
Hello, good afternoon. Fermín Bueno, co-founder and managing partner of Finovista. At Finovista, we help transform financial services and insurance industry in Spain and Latin America, building bridges between the fintech and insurtech world and the corporate world. We do this through a two-pronged mission. We try to empower and facilitate the fintech and insurtech ecosystems. We've got one of the largest event platforms in Spain and Latin America with FinoSummit. And then we also accelerate, scale, and build new business opportunities through startup corporate collaboration in these two industries. In that side, we are investors through our startup bootcamp programs. We are part of the startup bootcamp group. We have currently done 40 investments in Latin America, which turn us into the largest investor in fintech and insurtech and in Latin America. And we also work a lot with financial services institutions, with insurers, helping them to innovate with startup engagement programs, competitions, challenges, and various other programs.
Thank you. I'm Javier Torremocha. I'm a founding partner of Kiva Ventures. We're an early stage fund based here in Madrid, investing in Spanish and Portuguese entrepreneurs globally. I'm going to start creating some controversy. A lot of investors ask us, do you guys invest in fintech? Do you guys invest in insurtech? We do have one fintech investment in a company called Flywire. It's based between Boston and Valencia and basically facilitates cross-border payments in different verticals. Education being the main one, but they also do medical and travel. And yeah, we do invest. It's, how many investments do you have? It's like, well, just one. And the reason we give many times is that fintech or insurtech normally has two words in it, and a lot of the times we're missing either the fin aspect or the tech aspect, no? And insurtech. So, given you're the largest investor in the region, given you've founded an insurtech startup, given you work with insurtech startups, do you also think there is a lot of companies that call themselves or name themselves insurtech, fintech, or label themselves as such, but at the end of the day, there's very little real mass behind the companies?
Well, certainly there has been a lot of hype around fintech, especially the fintech world, right? In the last few years, right? It does happen that some startups might have not so much technology and some, financial services. But we do see lots of fintech startups, both in Spain and in the region, right? And there's been a tremendous growth in the last few years, right? Over 40 to 50% yearly growth in number of startups in countries like Mexico, like Brazil, like Spain, right? So there is a tremendous movement, right? And it is really happening, right? It is really happening. And investors are really active in the region, not just local investors, international investors like Finovista, or even US investors pouring a lot of capital into the markets.
Why is that? Is there a specific... Why is there such an opportunity in the region for that? Is it the way it's... Yeah.
Well, because banking is very inefficient and insurance very inefficient in various ways, right? Both in the served market, but also in the underserved market, right? Countries like Mexico have 50% of the population which is currently unbanked. It does happen the same in Colombia, in Peru. That is a huge opportunity, right? Technology, our mobile phones are in everyone's hands, right? Over 70% penetration, right? The means are there to deploy the technology and to deploy and to provide the services, right? So the opportunity is there. And countries like Mexico or Colombia has a tremendous entrepreneurial tech drive, which is really leveraging the opportunity, right?
Yeah. I also think that in the region, there are so many opportunities, at least in the insurance sector, because from our perspective, our experience is that in the pain point over there is bigger than in other regions, right? So the theory is that in order to create a successful product, you have to look for a pain point that has not been solved yet, try to automate them with technology, and solving also or improving the customer satisfaction experience. And that's what happened exactly in the insurance industry in Mexico. When you have an accident, for instance, in Mexico, what you have to do is they send you an adjuster that is like an expert that has to go to the place of the accident, right? So it's something that is it's a matter of fact. It's where it happens. That means that the driver has to be waiting, 45 minutes, 1 hour, till the adjuster go to the place of the accident, which is ridiculous, right? And that's how, I think that's one of the best examples of how good technology can help the industry a lot, saving costs and reducing and improving the experience of the customers. Yeah.
On top of what you're saying, I think there are like two different trends. One is everything that is related with technology. And in this case, I almost agree with you that the technology is completely agnostic to one sector or to the other. And it's the case of blockchain, for example. And please let me, I want to do promotion of the blockchain challenge that we've launched from Mutua Madrileña. If you're interested in taking part, you can go to our stand and we will give you all the information. It's really interesting. And blockchain.
We'll come back.
And in this case, blockchain is something that could be applicable to food and it could be applicable to insurtech. So in this case, this technology is the same for everything. And as everything grows, the technology will be better. And going to your point and going to this company that are really defined as insurtech companies or proptech or whatever is because they are really understanding what the client is expecting. We have the example of, well, in your case, I think your technology is such good that you are moving from vehicles working with us to homes, also working with us, and probably you will find another use example that your technology and your platform could be really applicable. So you could be completely horizontal, even you are now defining some use cases related with insurtech.
I have to say that, we met each other today, like physically, but it happens that there are relationships between all of us. So Finovest invested in Julio's company. Carmen is working with the company of Julio without having known him personally. Mutua is an investor in our funds, but nothing was prepared. Nothing was prepared. It just happened to be this way.
We are all connected. But we have companies like bought by many that has just spoken. They are an insurtech company. They could not be in another sector. So their technology or their approach to the client is an opportunity that they've defined here. And the legal framework has given them the business. So it's something that, from my point of view, it's something really, really specific from insurtech.
I want to come back to something you mentioned about pain points, and from a corporate perspective, I think an innovation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess one of the things when you sit down in your committee, you said, well, what do we want to innovate, and part has to do with the pain points of your customers, of your clients throughout the entire process. So in that sense, and when you as responsible for innovation, how do you approach that, particularly within Mutua, and you're coming from a different corporate, so even more generic? Is it, trying to solve things internally? Is it working with startups? Is it buying startups? Is it, how is it? Or are you looking at different ways to do that?
Well, we try to work in open innovation and internal innovation that is really related with the value chain of the business. So this is something not really disruptive. I think almost all of us in innovation work at the same level. In open innovation, I think we need to open the window, look what's happening outside, probably work with, or not without probably, we need to work with other partners, something with a different view that could help us to identify what startups are appearing in the market or what's happening with customers. And internal innovation, what we need to do, and is an example or an exercise to be humble, so to really identify in your value chain what is being selected or fostered by the clients. In this case, for example, what are you doing opening the new contract with a client is because what the client is expecting is to have a go with Mutua in the same moment as they need. And this is what we need to define. This is something that we really want to do, or what are they expecting from us? And this is what startups like Bedeo are helping.
Yeah. So,
have I answered?
Related with Mutua, what we're doing with them is we are speeding up the underwriting process. When someone signs the policy with the customers, some months ago, what they used to send an adjuster to check if the car has any pre-existing damage before signing the policy. What they are doing now with our technology is to help them just with a link. You click on the link and you go directly to the mobile web browser where they ask you some pictures. And video with artificial intelligence, we check if there is any pre-existing damage in order to speed up the process, which is an amazing experience for the customers because they don't have to wait a lot of time. And I think it's what you're doing in Mutua is really interesting for startups because you have a very practical approach. Like you are looking for startups that are interesting for your users to solve problems, and you connect them. And this is something like that other insurers they are not doing. So congrats for that.
Thank you.
For helping.
Now, as, we'll get back to you, no? And us as investors, no? But I'm a bit, the relationship between startups and corporates are a bit of hate and love, because it can either, boost your sales or it can kill you, no? Because corporates many times are, continue to behave with startups the same way that they do with other corporates. They want free pilots. They want you to, devote all your resources to their needs. They have all these absurd, payment timings and so on. And eventually, from an investor standpoint, is like, sounds great, but at the same time, be careful with what you're doing. What has been, your experience so far? Is it part of your core strategy to work with corporates like Mutua? Are you, developing like, 5, 7, 10 relationships at a time? How is your, in your business development process, how does that work?
It's a good question. We're talking about gazelles and elephants, but the thing is that our sales cycle for corporate is pretty long. It's like around 12, 13 months. So think about if you are an early stage startup and you're starting to deal with corporates, it could be something huge for you, but it also can kill you, as you said. And the free pilots is something that is happening right now. It's a matter of fact that if you want to collaborate with a corporate, you are going to find, for sure, a pilot to test your technology, which I understand, right? Because they are going to introduce in the process, a huge or really important process for the business of the company. They are introducing something that it could work or it could not work, right? So I understand that they have to test it. But it's true that when we start the collaboration, we met like a cultural shock, because we have different mental, different needs, different interests, and sometimes it's very difficult for both companies. Our experience is if you don't have like a more or less positive financial situation, it could be problematic. But finally, this type of collaborations are maybe for life. You start with a company, you give them value. So normally you don't stop the project till 5, 6, 10 years, because it's more or less the lifetime value of these projects are really interesting. And once you have the stamp of one of the insurers, you're doing a good job, then it's very easy to scale with other companies. So I recommend it, but taking into account that you have to have a positive financial situation. Yeah.
Fermin, from an investor point of view and focusing on insurtech, the insurance value chain is becoming highly disaggregated, and there are many different pieces. Mm-hmm. What do you look, at the time of making an investment decision? What are you, what kind of things are you looking at? What's your investment criteria? And also, given most of these things are very vertical oriented, I mean, the clients are mostly insurance companies or trying to, remove insurance companies from the process. What's your relationship with incumbents as to understand, what the really needs are, to understand if that technology in which you're investing, those products in which you're building, really serve that need, or it's timing doesn't match?
Yeah. So we are a very special type of investor, right? Because we run acceleration and scale programs and innovation programs, right? And we run those out of our offices in Mexico City with the support of industry partners. That means players like Mutua, like others, right? Mutua is not a partner on our program there, but we do have players like HSBC or Scotiabank or other large corporates which support our initiative. So we are effectively a machine that facilitates the innovation between corporates and startups. We do also invest money because we do have a small venture capital fund. that is funded by a couple of LPs, right? So we specifically look at what is worrying our corporate partners, which are banks, insurance companies, and other players of the banking and insurance value chain, right? We look at everything like startups like Beteo here, which does clearly B2B and is a technology enabler of the value chain, and there are many of those. And of course, we also look at business model innovation, right? Startups that are truly disruptive and that are bringing, a threat to the industry, right? We do have those, for example. We are an investor, for example, in Facturedo, which is a marketplace for invoices, or we're also an investor in Finerio, which is a PFM, like a FinTonic for Mexico. So we do cover, the main points or the main worries of the industry, and of course also the opportunities we see in the region, right? Yeah.
I want to pick up on something you mentioned about enabling technologies, and we've seen like main things over the last 20 years, no? And probably one was the PC as the enabler to develop a lot of things on top of that. Then we had mobile, and mobile was really the enabler to a lot of companies emerging that basically didn't exist before. In our opinion, the next wave of that enabler will be AI, and AI will facilitate a lot of applications on technologies that eventually exist, but that will facilitate those applications to have actual practiceness on companies. Carmen, you mentioned blockchain. So I wanted to ask you, do you really feel AI and blockchain as one of the main enablers for insurance companies, for startups focusing on insurance?
I'm completely sure. It's not because we have all these technologies in our solution, it's because we have seen in the insurance company that we are working with that the customer, they are asking for a new way of interaction with their companies, right? And if you think about the customer journey, how is the process from the moment that you sell a policy, the claim, the repairing of the vehicle, and finally the renewal of the policy. If you think about the whole customer journey, we see really interesting challenge to help with AI and blockchain. In our case, blockchain I think is really important in order to be sure that all the information that we are getting, the multimedia content that we get from the claims or the underwriting is secure. You have like a digital evidence of all the multimedia content. So we use blockchain for that in order to be sure about that. Okay, there is no fraud here, and that didn't change in the moment of the accident to the end of the process. And AI is basic also in the whole customer journey because we provide practically in real-time information of the damage of the vehicle. When we check the pre-existence of the damage when signing the policy, if the claim that we are processing has any coincidence with the pre-existing damage. And I think if you think about other segments of the customer journey, AI and blockchain are really, really important in our point of view.
Well, I think both technologies go around automation. And in the case of blockchain, what they provide to the industry or to the business where this is being applied is the visibility. So when someone is using blockchain, it's because they trust on the result, and they are just a proof to demonstrate that what is happening now is real. So it's like to have a signed paper, but it's something that is digital. So you don't need to be there. You don't need to have a stamp. This is what blockchain is providing, is to be trust on something. But in the case of artificial intelligence, this technology provides answers. So it's intelligence, it's artificial, so people should be there anywhere. People is not going to disappear. That is something that everybody speaks about when we speak about artificial intelligence, but it's a way to make every process easier, more transparent, and to have more satisfaction, both for managers or for customers who are involved of these projects. So an artificial intelligence is a really, really good example of a technology that could be applied everywhere, even here with people that is going around this event. Probably we are being analyzed and all our data is feeding a very big database that is going to have, who is going to provide something good to the innovation ecosystem in Madrid. So it could be applied to everything. And I think obviously it's something that is going to drive the future in every industry.
There's going to be there are four technologies that in the hands of the startups are very dangerous for the insurance industry, right? You mentioned AI, you mentioned blockchain, but there is also big data, right? Big data, really, insurance is an industry hungry for data, right? And startups, can really leverage that without having all the legacy behind of big insurers, right? So there is lots of, opportunities there. And then IoT, right? Data capturing, sensors all around, right? That is going to change car insurance. That is going to change health insurance.
We were
That
saying
is going to change.
All of us are walking sensors.
Yeah.
Everybody, with the phones, we're actually a sensor that recovers or retrieves a lot of data that can effectively be used by a lot of people.
Of course. Yeah. Better priced insurance. I mean, a lot of things, right? A lot of things. Enablement in the value chain, and of course, plenty of disruption, right? But for that, we need a lot of investments too.
And, I think in today's world, and until things change in terms of culture in many companies, I think Carmen's role is probably one of the toughest as innovation, because if she decides to work with Bedeo, and Bedeo, it's really provides operating efficiencies and so on. It's like, wow, Bedeo is so great. If it doesn't work, it's going to be Carmen's fault, not your fault. So in that sense, an insurance company is much more than just selling insurances, no? And because they also have a big balance sheet that invests in real estate and all type of insurances, from cars to life to home to devices to all sorts of things. I think one concept that is many times misunderstood is that insurance companies don't just work with insurtech companies, no? Because many times what you're trying to solve is a need or a pain point that we're saying at the beginning, and eventually are other type of companies that have nothing to do with the insurance world that solve those needs. So from an innovation perspective, how do you deal internally with, okay, and to your committees and so on, it's like we don't just need to focus on insurtech companies. We need to focus on technologies that help us become, a better company in front of our clients, more efficient.
Well, in case of Mutuo, I think it's something easier than other companies, because when we appear with a startup, people who decide are not afraid, they trust on us, and you're proof that they trust on us. But I think the most difficult for us is when a company is asking for a POC and they want to do a test with real clients, and we say, with employees, it could be, but with real clients, we are not going to fold. This is, I think, for me, is the difference, because with other companies that they are building a value proposal, they want to create, they want to prove day by day. And in our case, as we are an incumbent, this incumbent sometimes is a very good position, but in other situation is a gap we need to keep working and to solve. But I think we are going really faster because, for example, in our collaboration as investors in Kibo, now we are not looking just for profitability. We are looking for business opportunities. So we are moving from just the money to what is the strategic impact that we are going to have with this money that is not just in the P&L. So it's going to be far away from what was the first objective. So I think in the case of Mutua, we've evolved a lot. And I think it's going faster than what I expected when I joined the company.
I think we could be talking for ages, but I think our time is over.
Yeah.
So thank you very much to all the panel, and thank you for being here.